Our guest today shares his story on how he was able to go from being a taxi driver to securing his first cloud role. He also shares what actions he took to go from being an entry-level cloud engineer to becoming a senior cloud engineer. This episode is packed with valuable insights and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Welcome to the Cloud Career Mentor Show, where we're developing the next generation of cloud professionals. If you've been struggling to get your first job in the cloud and you feel lost and confused, I don't know what the next steps are, I'd encourage you to sign up to our free newsletter where I share my best tips, best advice, step-by-step actions you can take that puts you in the best position to get in that first cloud job. To sign up, just go to thecloudcareermentor.com/blog. The link will be in the show notes, so just sign up and you'll get the best tips straight away. All right, let's jump right into this episode. Hello and welcome to the show. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Daniel Gaynor and he's a senior cloud engineer and an AWS community builder. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you very much for having me. Great to be here.
Now I'm really excited to get your story about, your journey into the cloud and how you've been finding it. The first question I have for you is, why did you decide to get into the cloud?
So I think I had a friend of mine. He was telling me about AWS and how the cloud technologies is going to be the future. So not knowing anything about IT, not knowing where to go, I took his advice on it and I just went straight for AWS, the cloud. Yeah.
No, that's good. I mean, you have a really interesting video about your story on your YouTube channel, which I'll link in the description notes. I really advise everyone to watch it. Can you just talk us through? Because when I watched the video, you mentioned how you started as a taxi driver, I think. And, what steps did you take to go from your previous career to your cloud career? Because the reason I ask is because getting to the cloud is never really straightforward. There's always twists and turns. And so I just want to get your experience of how you made that happen.
100%. So I was a taxi driver in London. When COVID hit and lockdown hit, I knew that there's something that I need to change. I hadn't planned for that year already to study IT and by the end of the year to get an IT job. But that COVID lockdown just accelerated my growth there, right? So I quit my job and then I went in full-time study mode, started with AWS, went for the solution architect first, the associate certification, studied everything. It took me like 4 months because there were lots of things that I didn't know coming from non-IT background. Then studied for the SysOps administrator and the associate certification for AWS. And then I went into looking for a job because I was like, I spent 6 months on, grasping all this IT concepts. Now is the time to double down on try to finding a job. Yeah.
Nice. And while you were getting all these certifications, what sort of projects were you doing to sort of practice your skills and get more hands-on experience?
Yeah, while I was studying, there was lots of things that I did in order to hone those skills. There was lots of mini projects related to AWS services. And mostly I used a platform called A Cloud Guru, and they had lots of labs. And I was kind of using those labs as my mini project because at that time, I was not very well versed into searching the internet for this hands-on project. I didn't have my community on LinkedIn to help with all sort of resources. And I never kind of looked at the community as a sort of helper. So I was always trying to do everything myself, right? And I think that was a bit of a mistake from my side because I didn't know how great the IT community can be when it comes to helping each other into, doing this community-driven project, hands-on projects that can help you land that job. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people in my community that, the big focus they should have is on the hands-on project because, I think certifications are really good to get you an overview of, cloud services and things like that. But, most times if you get a job interview, there's usually a technical component and, maybe it's troubleshooting something. And these are the skills that are mostly picked up, through hands-on practice and things like that. So yeah, I'm glad you shared that. And so how many interviews or how many jobs do you think you applied for before you got that first role?
I think I have applied over 300 roles probably. I hear back from like maybe 5 people in total, and more of them they were like, you don't have experience and so on. And I did manage to get one interview, and then that interview I turned it to be my first job, and it was not AWS related. It was just IT. It was related to security and networking. But I loved that part too, and I knew that in order to get where I want to be, I will take anything as long as it builds my IT experience, right? So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you mentioned that, especially around the number of jobs you apply. Because, I tell people that, you need to be applying for jobs every day. You need to think of that as a full-time job. I usually tell them like 25 jobs a day minimum. Like because, you know, over a month, that's like 300 jobs. And I think finding the first cloud job, it's basically a numbers game. Like, you know, like you say, you apply for 300 jobs, maybe five call you back for an interview. And then out of that, then you should be able to get at least one. But I see so many beginners, like they did apply for one job here, one job there. And I'm like, we need some more urgency here. You need to like put some work in on this.
I think in my opinion, what people need to understand is that when you're a beginner in IT, people will not 100% look at only your IT experience because you're a beginner in that they know that you don't have all the skills to complete the job. But I think lots of people, what they don't do, they don't leverage their personality and their personal skills, right? In terms of to have resiliency, to have dedication of finding the right answer, putting the work to find, to learn new things. So I think that because you're there for the tech job, the other social skills or any background skills they have from previous jobs, try to transition them within the role that you have, because that will help you try to land that job, because they know that you don't really have full IT skills like a lot, right? Because you're applying for a junior position or stuff. So
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I
leveraging your
100%, I
can be very
100%,
useful. Yeah.
I 100% agree because I've had a job recently, like a new job I started, and what they said to me was that, look, you're not the most technical candidate, but you know, you like my personality is really good, and they know I'd fit in well with the team, and that's I think something beginners don't really take into consideration is that they always focus on, oh, I want to get as technical as possible, but at the end of the day, like DevOps and cloud is a team sport, and you need to make sure your personality is coming through so they can be like, you know what, maybe, she's missing some skills or he's missing some skills, but, they have the right attitude and, they'll fit in well with the team and, they have the aptitude to grow. So yeah, I think that's very important to sort of come across in your interview. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I think, we've covered some of your journey in terms of how you were able to get your first job, even though it wasn't in like the cloud, it was in security and networking. But what I usually tell people is that, because they come to me, they're like, oh, should I apply for cloud roles, DevOps roles? I'm like, apply for all of them. wherever gives you an offer,
Yeah.
take it. And then you can sort of navigate from there. So how did you parlay your networking and security role into a full cloud role?
Well, you do have to understand that, cloud is related to everything. So you do need some security skills, you need some networking skills. And I was like, for me at the time, it's like, because it's IT and I want to do this, I'm going to learn this, but while still working on my cloud skills, right? So while I was holding this job, I was having to do things with, not AWS related, but I was still continuing my AWS studies, my labs and all this kind of stuff. So I never stopped on that side because I knew that one day another opportunity will come for cloud and then I have to get myself ready for that. So, but while I was doing that, I was like, networking and security, they're really essential skills to pick up because, cloud technologies pretty much is like, it's not necessarily something super new. It still applies on the basics, right? You still need to know the basics. And I think that helped me a lot.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So I can see now you're a senior cloud engineer. Maybe walk us through what your responsibilities were as a junior cloud engineer. Like, what kind of things were you doing in your first role versus how your responsibilities sort of changed over time, junior, mid-level, and then senior.
I think that when you're junior, your responsibility is to get the job done, right? So it's to get the job done to the best of your abilities from a technical point of view. So you have to just kind of like, research a lot and how to make it possible from a technical point of view. The more you progress towards seniority, I think it's less about technical skills, but it kind of comes in the blending their personal skills, like, their management skills, planning skills. There's different things because you have to deal in a senior position, you have to deal with customers, try to plan a project, try to plan the implementation, write documentation and so on. While on a junior level, they don't really ask all that from, right? So, from you, what's required is to get the job done from a tech point of view. But the other aspects, the other things that, need to be thought of, like the information needed for the project, and so on, like that comes on the senior engineer responsibility.
Yeah, I agree with you. I remember when I was junior, like you're saying, I was just like, I just wanna get it done. I want to look good in front of the seniors and the rest of the team. And then when I got to the mid-level, I was more like, okay, I'm quite good. I'm quite competent. I don't know what the seniors are doing, because it just seemed like because I was just given the tasks and I was executing on it, I thought, oh, this stuff is easy, And then when you become senior, you realize that they protect you from so many meetings, design decisions. And so by the time it gets to like the mid-level or junior, a lot of the difficult bits have already been figured out. And so, all you have to do is execute as a junior. But yeah, it definitely changes. The higher up you go, there's, like you say, a lot more meetings, a lot more design decisions, a lot more conversation in dealing with stakeholders, all that stuff. So yeah, I think that's just good to clarify, because I think people don't really have a good appreciation for what sort of senior cloud engineers or solutions architects do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the next question I have for you is, I'd like to know about an interesting project you've worked on in your cloud career.
Okay. So from my side, there's lots of interesting projects, like what I like, I'm a cloud consultant, and what I like about it is that I deal with many different architectures, many different customers and so on. So I think that having this wide range of skills is very good, because I get to dip my toes into many different AWS services and how to integrate them and so on and so on, right? I think some of the projects that I really, really like, they're not necessarily the most technical, but one particular comes to mind. It was a database migration from on-premise to AWS with DMS, with schema conversion tool and all that kind of stuff. And I think why I enjoy that is, even though, I mean, for some people might not be super hard, but for some people who never dealt with it, it was, quite challenging. It was that I took it from end to end, right? So I think for me, it was kind of like one of my first projects that I done end to end, right? Where I had to do everything about, like the documentation, the customers and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that was really good, right? So that was kind of validation of my skills and the fact that I'm ready for this, right? As in, like, I can think of all the kind of stuff. So yeah, it was really, really good. I think that's one project that I really enjoyed.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I always think that there's one project in every cloud engineer's sort of journey that you're like, okay, this is when I've transitioned from mid to senior, right? There's like one project that you do that is like, okay. So I think that makes sense. And yeah, I've used sort of the SET tool, because database migrations are quite tricky, because a lot of the time you want to have it with minimal downtime. Maybe you're transitioning from a, Microsoft SQL database to a MySQL database. And so you have to make sure all the schemas align, and there's a lot of moving parts. So yeah, that's definitely a challenging one. That's definitely a challenging one. It's a question I always ask as well, because I always think it's good to sort of show where we've messed up in the past. Have you think of a time when you made a mistake, and like you did something that maybe because of your inexperience you did something wrong, and how did you sort of deal with it and recover from that?
I think as much as we try to avoid those mistakes will come. I always kind of like, if I kind of mentor other engineers, regardless of the level, pretty much, I always tell them, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Be afraid of like not having the skills of correcting that mistake, right? So mistakes are obvious, because they're, we deal with machines every day, and sometimes you just can't foresee everything that comes to your way, right? So you're bound to do mistakes. The thing here is like how you're going to sort it and how you're going to prevent it in the future not to happen again. I remember I done a mistake on a customer where I was dealing with a server, and I wasn't sure if it's used on anything, on any of their components, right? And because I didn't really have that visibility, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do a backup before, right? Just to make sure, nobody told me to do a backup. I just felt intuitively it's best to just start. Everything I touch is kind of try to secure it before through a backup or something. And then I kind of deleted the server because they were not needed. But apparently customer was like, no, I actually had a small script that does this or something like that, right? And it was like, we actually need it in the application, right? And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I didn't know that. Obviously, we didn't discover that at that time. And I was like, well, no problem. I took a backup. We restored the server up, and then we managed to get that script again and working and stuff. But it was a thing where intuitively it was kind of like, oh, I've done a mistake. I should have checked more probably, or, I should have, kind of dig into the file servers and stuff, but I didn't. So, but that was a mistake where initially I was like, oh, wow, I'm so glad I dodged it. But I was like, oh, so close, right? And yeah, I mean, it was not more, I think it was a mistake from my side a bit, because I was like, I should have checked more, right? So I was a bit, by that time I fixed everything, because even initially I didn't thought it was going to be fixable, right? But, then I managed to fix it like an hour later or something. So yeah.
I mean, I think that's really good. You're definitely much more savvy than I am, because my mistake was, this is when I was a junior. I just started up in the cloud, and I think this was actually like one of my first few like actual projects I was given, and the brief was to The brief was to, we had an EFS server with some files on it. We're going to move it to another EFS server. Like, I think, that was more secure and whatever. So the brief was copy everything from EFS1 to EFS2 and delete EFS1, right? So, seems pretty straightforward. So, I copied everything from EFS1 to EFS2. And with EFS2, there was already some existing data on there as well. So just copy from EFS1 to EFS2. And then I'm like, okay, time to delete EFS1. And then I ran the RM, -R space asterisk, like remove all. And after like 30 seconds, I realized that I was actually deleting from EFS2, the one that we're meant to be preserving. And so I immediately stopped it and I was like, oh snap. And so I was like, this is one of those moments where I was thinking, if I don't tell anyone, it will be fine. But I remember my senior engineer at the time when I joined, one of the first things he said to me was that, look, everyone messes up. If you make a mistake, just let us know immediately and we'll see what we can do. And so like my mind just went back to that conversation. And so I tapped him on the shoulder. I was like, hey, listen, this is what's happened. And yeah, so we tried to retrieve it, but obviously we couldn't. And then we ended up going to the client and telling them what happened. Luckily, like I didn't really delete anything too much. And, it was all fine in the end. But that's one of those moments where I thought, this career is about to end before it's even begun. So I like to tell that story because I think, and obviously since then, I took more of your approach where it's like, okay, take a backup, double check everything before you run a delete command and all of that. But yeah, since then, I haven't really like done anything that bad. But yeah, like, I think these are all parts of the learning journey.
I like to think one way of saying things is that if a system can be broken, that means it was not built in the proper way from the beginning. If there was some sort of check that would have forbidden you or that would have double checked with you, are you sure you want to do this kind of stuff, right? Like maybe it would have been different, but obviously sometimes you can't, but most of the time I try to do as much as possible to put those checks or to try to avoid this kind of, or double check everything, right? Just to make sure that you're not doing a mistake like that. Yeah.
Definitely. And I also think it's sort of, I think that's a good outlook. Cool. What actions or attributes do you think have helped you progress the most in your career? Like, what do you think you do that's helped you to accelerate your career?
I think it's a combination of multiple things. I think, obviously I would say my work ethics, maybe. I work every day. I tend to hone my skill every day. I always see every day loss as kind of like an opportunity loss to improve myself and so on. I always based on that. So I think that was really helpful for me. I think I combined work with networking in terms of like networking with other people within the space, within the IT space. And I think that was really helping me reach different levels, go to different jobs. And, just by talking with other people, getting their input on situations and stuff, it helped me a lot. So I think that was really good. And I think being resilient, right? Like not giving up. It's a job where you just have to continue no matter what. Just have to keep going regardless how hard it is. But one day you're going to succeed. Might take longer, might take less, but you just have to keep going. Yeah. I think those three things made me really, really somebody that succeeded in this industry in a way. So yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, my network dropped a little bit there. But that's fine. What do you enjoy the most about your cloud career?
I think I enjoy the fact that I deal with lots of different AWS services, right? So in the career that I am as a consultant is that I get to see many, many different services that I get some of them I'm curious, some of them maybe not that curious, but I'm still, enjoying the fact that as long as it's AWS, I enjoy the fact to dig deeper in this kind of services because one day it will help you knowing all the features, how we integrate, what problems might arise when you deal with this kind of stuff. Sometimes I just, I deal a year ago with something and then now I see the same situation. I'll be like, oh, I know what to do because I already dealt with that a year ago. And I remember I struggled so much in this space where, if we do this, it will be much quicker and so on. So I feel like having that vast experience, maybe not deep, but, vast experience of many different AWS services helped me see the bigger picture and try to adjust them much better. So yeah.
Definitely. I think working in the cloud encourages system thinking where you can see what the different components are and how you can put them them together in a way that's cohesive, that's resilient, that's secure. And yeah, it just helps you to think about systems in a whole new way. So I think that's quite important as well. What do you think is the biggest misconception about getting your first cloud job or developing your cloud career?
I think the biggest one is that people think that they can get the solution architect role immediately after they just done the certification. Like,
Mm.
I was thinking the same, right? Because you don't know, like you just join into this career, you see solution architect associate certification. I'll get the solution architect role. So that's not true. Like I feel like now that I know even more, even now I'm not too sure if I'm ready for a full solution architect. I guess solution architect has different levels too, like you get principal architect and all this kind of stuff. But it's definitely a lot to it. You know, it's like you have to have great visibility of all the services, all the depths of it. You know, it's like it's really something so complex that it's quite hard to get. And I feel like you need at least a couple of years of experience in order to get to that, to be called a solution architect, right? So, you know, I call myself a cloud engineer. I don't think I'm a solution architect. And even though, you know, I studied a lot and system design and all this kind of stuff, it takes experience. It's something that you're not necessarily learning from the books where you go and you just kind of learn for like a year or two and then you become a solution architect. I think it's something with experience of like building and trying and implementing and all this kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I speak to so many people who are looking to get their first job in the cloud. And, you know, the first job they apply for is like solution architect. I think because there's a lot of misinformation out there. You know, there's boot camps that are telling you that, or you just get 2 certifications that you could become a solutions architect earning, you know, 6 figures, you know, your first job. And it's just not true. In fact, there's a guy I mentored and, he paid a lot of money for this boot camp. He got like 2 certifications. And for a year after that, he went into debt for this. A year after that, he got no responses. And so, I started talking to him, like asking about his search, what he's been doing. And literally by tweaking, I was like, okay, don't apply for solutions architect roles. Apply for cloud engineer, DevOps, junior, whatever, anything except solution architect. And for that whole year, he'd literally gotten 0 calls from recruiters. And by just changing that one thing, he started getting more and more calls from recruiters. So I think, yeah, that's probably the most harmful misconception about getting your first cloud role. So yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. What are your future plans? You're senior cloud engineer now. What position would you like to pursue next? What would you like to do next?
That's a very hard thing to think about. I think that based on my background and stuff, it's been almost 3 years and a bit since I started this whole journey, right? So to get to a senior position, it's quite quick, right? I think what I have to do now is kind of to get more experience, get more, while still developing my skills, my knowledge and stuff. But most important is the hands-on experience dealing with project. So I think for the next year or two, it's just about getting that experience and getting that extra knowledge and stuff. I maybe in the future, principal architect or solution architect. I think it's solution architect first and then principal architect and stuff.
Yes.
That could be a route for me to take. I also enjoy security a lot. So I think there's another route will be something like a CISO, right? Like a information security officer and so on. But there's many things to it. I think that sometimes the things that I don't really plan for a certain position, all I plan is to hone my skills enough in order to be capable to do this kind of roles, right? Because then the roles will come. But it's just about the skills. I'm always looking at the skills and not the position.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice because I think when we get to like more mid-level or senior positions, it's always a case of, several options open up. It's either, okay, do I become like a technical leader? So in terms of solutions architect or principal lead, for some people, they might want to go to more management positions where they're like, you know what, like I know enough, but I don't really want to go down that technical route anymore. Maybe I just want to like, manage teams and things like that. For some people, they might want to decide to, okay, now I want to specialize, like you say, I want to specialize in security or I want to specialize in networking or databases. So it's one of those things where as you get a good grasp of the industry, maybe you start to get an idea of, like for me, I knew I never really wanted to get into management because I always valued my technical skills. So I was like, yeah, that's sort of more of the path I wanted to go down. But yeah, there's just options, different options for different people. And generally, I always encourage beginners, like, don't really think of specializing early, like just be general, get a good flavor of what these different components are. And then, you go in advancing your career, you might decide, okay, I want to specialize in cybersecurity or whatever. So no, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, finally, is there any way you'd you'd like people, if people want to reach out to you, maybe they want to check out more of your content, where should they go?
Yeah, so mostly they can check on me on LinkedIn at Daniel Gaina. I tend to be quite active there. Also, I started a YouTube channel called Daniel Talk Tech, where I share my story and I share certain things that I think they're valuable. I haven't worked a lot on my YouTube channel. I think that that's kind of like a work in progress. The same where when I started in cloud, it takes like a couple of years to take off and so on. But it's quite hard to juggle all of them, like working, getting experience, studying, personal life and all that kind of stuff. So clearly some things, that are dropped behind, but I'm okay with that because, I know that the most important thing is to try to get experience, try to, keep up with the studies and stuff. And that's, the other thing that's like side objectives type of thing, like in a game where the main quest and then you get the side objective off. So yeah, they can find me there. I'm pretty open to talk to people, guide them, and, just share my view of it, my experience. That doesn't mean that my way has to be the right way. It's just kind of like, we as people tend to give out our best advice. And then if you as a receiver think it's good to inglobate it in your, in your career, in your path, then take it. If not, then just do something else or search for other advice and stuff. So yeah,
I think that's a valid
never
point.
a right way. Yes.
And I think this is why I'm setting up this show where I interview, different people, because everyone got into it in a different way. But I think the most common theme I've found is just putting in the work and putting in a lot of work. So there's no shortcuts to this. So thanks for sharing those. I'll make sure I put all the links and all your details in the description below. And the final question I have for you is, let's say you have someone, or think back to yourself, from when you first decided you wanted to get into cloud. What one piece of advice would you give yourself that would set you up for success, do you think?
I think leverage the tech skills with your personal skills and with some networking skills in terms of not IT networking, but like human networking. And I think that's the key to success, because certain things is not about how much tech you know. Certain things is not about how people pleasant you are and, like you have people skills and stuff. It has to be a combination of all this three coming together in order to be successful.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Daniel. We'll talk soon. Make sure you give the video a like if you found it interesting. Why not try one of these videos? You could try that one or that one. I think this one's my favorite. No, this one. Watch this one. Just pick one of them. All right. See you later.